Sir, I'm going to need you to leave. Now. The manager's voice cut through the upscale restaurant like a blade through silk. Marcus stood there, his black hoodie still damp from the rain outside, his Jordan 1s squeaking slightly on the polished marble floor. Around him, the Friday night crowd at Bellissimo, Atlanta's most exclusive Italian steakhouse, went silent. White tablecloths, crystal chandeliers, the kind of place where entrees started at $75 and the wine list required a sommelier to translate. He just wanted to grab dinner before his late-night flight. Nothing special, just a good meal. I have a reservation, Marcus said quietly, pulling out his phone. Table for one, under Williams. The manager, a thin white man in his 40s with slicked back hair and a smile that never reached his eyes, didn't even glance at the phone. We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. There's a dress code. You're not appropriately attired. Marcus looked down at himself. Black hoodie, yes, but it was a $600 Balenciaga piece. The jeans were Tom Ford. The watch on his wrist cost more than most people's cars. But he knew, God, he knew, that none of that mattered right now. Not to this man, not in this moment. Your website doesn't mention a dress code, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the heat crawling up his neck. I checked before I made the reservation. Well, it's company policy. The manager crossed his arms. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the diner down the street. The diner down the street. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. Around them, other diners were staring now, some with pity, some with discomfort, a few with barely concealed satisfaction. An older black couple in the corner booth looked away quickly, their faces tight with shared humiliation. They knew. They always knew. I'd like to speak to the owner, Marcus said. The manager's smile widened. Mr. Castellano doesn't take walk-in complaints. Now, are you going to leave, or do I need to call security? There were so many things Marcus could have said. So many cards he could have played. The phone in his pocket held enough power to shatter this man's smug little world into pieces. But standing there, with dozens of eyes on him, with that particular cocktail of rage and shame and bone-deep exhaustion that every black person knows, he just wanted it to be over. I'll leave, Marcus said quietly. He turned toward the door, and that's when he heard it. A woman's voice from a nearby table, not quite whispered enough. See, I told you this neighborhood was changing. Marcus stopped. His hand was on the brass door handle, rain still streaking down the glass. He could feel his heartbeat in his temples. 20 years. 20 years of building himself from nothing, and he was still that same kid from Bankhead, still getting followed in stores, still being told he didn't belong. He pushed through the door into the Atlanta night, the rain immediately soaking through his hoodie. Behind him, the warmth and laughter of Bellissimo continued like nothing had happened. Like he had never existed at all. But Marcus Williams didn't get where he was by staying down. And what happened next would make headlines across the country. Let me rewind. Let me tell you how a night like this was even possible. Let me tell you about a man who had everything and nothing at the same time. Marcus Williams grew up in Bankhead courts, back when Atlanta still remembered what real poverty looked like. His mama worked 3 jobs, cleaning offices at night, answering phones during the day, and braiding hair in their living room on weekends. His father had left when Marcus was 6, leaving behind nothing but child support payments that came as regularly as Georgia snow. But his mama, Sharon Williams, was the kind of woman who turned food stamps into Thanksgiving dinners that fed the whole building. The kind who made Marcus read the newspaper every morning before school, even when they couldn't afford the subscription and had to fish yesterday's paper out of the lobby trash. The kind who told him every single day that the world didn't get to define who he was. Baby, you are not these projects, she'd say, gripping his face in her calloused hands. You are not what they see when they look at you. You are what you decide to be. You hear me? He heard her. Marcus got into Georgia Tech on a full scholarship. Not for basketball, like everyone assumed, but for computer science. While his classmates were pledging fraternities and partying on frat row, Marcus was in the library until 2 a.m., teaching himself to code, building apps, dreaming in algorithms and user interfaces. By 25, he'd sold his first startup for $8 million. By 30, his second company went for $75 million. By 35, which was exactly how old he was on this rainy Friday night, Marcus Williams was the founder and CEO of Nexus Technologies, a cloud computing company valued at $1.2 billion. He had homes in 3 cities. He'd been profiled in Forbes, Black Enterprise, and TechCrunch. He'd met with presidents and princes. But none of that mattered when he walked into a restaurant in a hoodie. The Uber driver who picked him up outside Bellissimo was an older black man with silver in his beard. He took one look at Marcus's face in the rearview mirror and said, "Rough night, young brother." Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Something like that. Let me guess. They didn't think you could afford it? Marcus almost laughed. Almost. Dress code violation. The driver sucked his teeth, that universal sound of black disappointment that needs no translation. Man, I done seen it all driving in this city. I picked up a brother from the airport last month, surgeon at Emory, just came back from a conference in Dubai, stopped to grab coffee at that bougie spot in Buckhead, and they asked him if he was there to apply for the dishwasher position. They drove in silence for a moment, rain drumming on the roof. "Where you headed?" the driver asked. Marcus pulled out his phone. He had a flight to catch, a board meeting in San Francisco in the morning. But his fingers were already moving across the screen, pulling up information, making calls, sending texts to his chief counsel, his CFO, his head of acquisitions. "Change of plans," Marcus said. "Take me to the Ritz, downtown." "You got it." In the back seat of that Uber, with Atlanta's lights smearing past the rain-streaked windows, Marcus Williams made a decision. He thought about his mama, who never lived to see his first big exit, who died of a stroke at 59, still working, still fighting, still believing her baby boy could change the world. He thought about that couple in the restaurant, the way they'd looked away, carrying their own scars. He thought about every time he'd been followed in a store, every time a woman had clutched her purse tighter in an elevator, every time someone had assumed he was the help instead of the owner, and he decided that tonight, finally, he was going to do something about it. "Driver," Marcus said, leaning forward, "you know that restaurant we just left? Bellissimo? The fancy Italian spot? Yeah, I know it. Picked up plenty of white folks from there. Never any of us, though. How would you like to see that change?" The driver glanced in the rearview mirror, confused. "How you mean?" Marcus smiled for the first time that night. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who just decided to move a mountain. "You'll see. Trust me. You'll see." The Ritz-Carlton suite overlooked downtown Atlanta like a throne overlooking a kingdom. Marcus stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, phone pressed to his ear, watching the rain turn the city into a watercolor painting of lights and motion. "I don't care what time it is in London, Gerald. Wake him up." On the other end, his chief counsel, Gerald Moss, a Howard Law graduate who'd been with Marcus since the second startup, sounded fully awake despite it being past midnight. Lawyers who worked with Marcus learned quickly that sleep was negotiable. "You want to buy Bellissimo?" Gerald said. "The restaurant chain?" "The whole company. Castellano Restaurant Group. They own 17 locations across the Southeast." "Marcus, I understand you're upset about what happened tonight, but I'm not upset, Gerald. I'm focused. There's a difference." Marcus moved away from the window, pulling up financial data on his laptop. "They're privately held, but I did some digging. Revenue's been declining for 3 years straight. The founder, Antonio Castellano, is 76 years old and his kids don't want the business. They've been quietly shopping it around for months. How do you know all this? Because I always do my homework. Now get me a meeting with Castellano tomorrow. I don't care how you make it happen. Gerald was quiet for a moment. You're serious about this? As a heart attack. And Gerald? I want this done fast. I want to own that company before the week is out. That's impossible. Due diligence alone takes... Then make it possible. That's what I pay you for. Marcus hung up and made his next call. Jessica Chen, his CFO, answered on the first ring. She was in Singapore for a conference, which meant it was Saturday afternoon for her. Talk to me about liquid assets, Marcus said without preamble. How much can we move in 48 hours without disrupting operations? Jessica didn't even pause. This was why he'd hired her. Depends on what you're buying. A restaurant chain, private sale, estimated value around 70 to 90 million. That's pocket change for us, but why? This isn't our sector. It is now, I'll explain later. Just make sure the money's ready to move. The third call went to his head of PR, a fierce sister named Tamara Robinson who'd worked for Obama's campaign before joining Nexus. She picked up sounding suspicious. Marcus, it's after midnight. This better be good. How would you like to handle the biggest diversity and inclusion story in the hospitality industry? Now she was awake. I'm listening. I'm about to buy a restaurant chain that just kicked me out for wearing a hoodie while black. And when I own it, we're going to transform the entire operation from the ground up. New leadership, new policies, new training, new ownership structure that includes the employees. And we're going to make sure every news outlet from Atlanta to New York knows exactly why we did it. Tamara was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Oh, we're about to burn the building down, aren't we? We're going to rebuild it better, but first, we're gonna burn it down. By 3 a.m., Marcus had assembled a team of lawyers, financial analysts, and investigators working around the clock. By 6 a.m., they had a complete financial picture of Castellano Restaurant Group. Declining revenue, outdated business model, management complaints, 3 pending discrimination lawsuits that had been quietly settled, and a board of directors who were desperate to sell before the whole operation went under. Antonio Castellano agreed to meet at 8 a.m. The Castellano family offices occupied the top floor of a renovated warehouse in West Midtown, all exposed brick and reclaimed wood, trying desperately to look hip. Marcus arrived in a custom Tom Ford suit, his beard fresh-lined, diamond cufflinks catching the morning light. Gerald was beside him, carrying a leather portfolio thick with documents. Antonio Castellano was exactly what Marcus expected. Old-world Italian-American, complete with the gold pinky ring and the condescending smile of a man who'd built an empire on Olive Garden dreams. His son, Anthony Jr., sat beside him, 40-something, soft around the middle, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Mr. Williams, Antonio said, his accent still thick despite 50 years in America. I understand you're interested in our little restaurant business. Little. That word was deliberate. A test. Marcus sat down, unbuttoned his suit jacket, and slid a bound document across the mahogany table. I'm interested in buying your company, all of it, and I'd like to close the deal by Monday. Antonio's smile flickered. Monday? Young man, business doesn't work that... $65 million. Cash. I'll take on all debts, all liabilities, all pending legal issues. My lawyers have already drafted the paperwork. All you need to do is sign. The room went silent. Anthony Jr. leaned forward, suddenly very interested. Antonio's face had gone carefully neutral. You can't be serious, the old man said. I'm always serious when it comes to business, Mr. Castellano. Your company is worth about 70 million on paper, but we both know the real value is closer to 50 given your declining revenue and the lawsuits. I'm offering you 65 because I want this done quickly and cleanly. You get to walk away with your dignity intact, your family taken care of, and a nice retirement in Boca. Or wherever old restaurant magnates go to die. Antonio's face flushed red. You come into my office, I come into your office with a solution to your problem. You want out. Your kids want out. Your investors want out. I'm offering you the exit. Take it. Gerald slid another document across the table. This is our full financial disclosure. Mr. Williams can have the funds transferred within 24 hours of signing. We'll handle all employee communications, all transition logistics, everything. You simply walk away. Anthony Jr. picked up the document, his hands actually trembling slightly. Marcus watched him scan the numbers, saw the exact moment the reality hit. $65 million. No negotiation, no months of due diligence, just a clean exit from a sinking ship. Dad, Anthony Jr. said quietly. But Antonio was staring at Marcus now, really seeing him for the first time. Wait, the old man said slowly. You were there last night, at the Buckhead location. Marcus held his gaze. I was. My manager said there was an incident. Some guy in a hoodie making a fuss. Your manager kicked out a paying customer because of how he looked. That customer happened to be me. And now that customer is about to become your boss. Marcus leaned forward. Let me be very clear, Mr. Castellano. I'm buying your company because I can. Because I'm tired of places like yours deciding who belongs and who doesn't. And because when I own Bellissimo, every black person, every brown person, every person who's ever been made to feel less than is going to know they have a place at the table. Antonio's jaw worked. This is revenge. No, this is business. Revenge would be destroying you. I'm actually saving you. Marcus stood up, buttoning his jacket. You have until 5 p.m. to decide. After that, I take my offer elsewhere. Your company continues its slow death, and everyone knows you had a chance to save your family's legacy, but your pride got in the way. He walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Mr. Castellano, that manager from last night? His name is Richard Brennan, right? He's fired, effective immediately. That's non-negotiable. Marcus walked out, leaving Gerald to handle the closing details. In the elevator down, his phone buzzed. Tamara. I just got a call from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, her text read. Somehow they heard rumors about a major acquisition. You want to comment? Marcus smiled. He hadn't leaked anything yet, but in Atlanta, word traveled fast, especially in the black community, especially when justice was about to be served. Not yet, he texted back. But get ready. By Monday, we're going to own the news cycle. The elevator doors opened to the parking garage. Marcus's driver was waiting with the car. But before he got in, Marcus took a moment to look up at the building, at the floors of offices where old men were probably panicking right now, where a family legacy was being packed into bankers' boxes. His phone rang. Gerald. They're signing, Gerald said. 5 p.m. They want to move forward. Marcus let out a breath. Good. Start the press release. And Gerald, make sure it tells the whole story. I don't want them to be able to spin this. You sure you want to go public with what happened to you? Marcus thought about that couple in the restaurant, about his mother, about every kid in Bankhead Courts who needed to know that the world could change. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. The news broke on Sunday morning exactly 48 hours after Marcus Williams was kicked out of Bellissimo. Tech billionaire buys restaurant chain after being denied service. By Monday, it was everywhere. CNN, MSNBC, Good Morning America, The View, Black Twitter was on fire. The hashtag Bellissimo boycott was trending, except now it was Bellissimo buyout. And the internet was having a field day. The story had everything: race, class, revenge, redemption, and a billionaire in a hoodie. It was the kind of narrative that cut through the noise because it touched something raw and real that every black person understood. Marcus watched it all unfold from his office at Nexus headquarters, fielding calls from reporters, declining interview requests from everyone except Gail King, who he agreed to sit down with on Wednesday, and working with his new team to plan the transformation of Bellissimo. But there was one piece of business left unfinished. Monday evening, Marcus walked into the Buckhead location of Bellissimo for the second time in 72 hours. This time he didn't need a reservation. He owned the place. The same hostess from Friday night was at the podium. Her eyes went wide when she recognized him. "Mr. Williams, I didn't know—" "It's fine," Marcus said quietly. "Is Richard Brennan still here?" "He's in the manager's office." Marcus walked through the dining room. It was early dinner service, only half full. Customers looked up, some recognizing him from the news, others just curious about the black man in the suit, walking with such purpose through the restaurant. The older black couple from Friday night was there again, sitting in the same corner booth. When they saw him, the woman's hand flew to her mouth. Marcus nodded at them. They nodded back. No words needed. The manager's office was small, cramped, smelling of old coffee and desperation. Richard Brennan sat behind the desk, his face pale, his slicked back hair disheveled. When Marcus walked in, the man actually flinched. "Mr. Williams, I can explain—" "You don't need to explain anything, Richard. I understand exactly what happened Friday night. You saw a black man in casual clothes and you made an assumption. An assumption based on generations of conditioning, of prejudice, of being taught that people who look like me don't belong in places like this." Richard's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "I was following company policy." "There is no company policy about dress code. I've read every document, every manual, every memo from the past 10 years. You made up that policy on the spot because you didn't think I belonged here." Marcus sat down in the chair across from the desk. "Do you know what the worst part is, Richard?" The manager shook his head. "The worst part is that you probably don't even think you're racist. You probably have black friends. You probably voted for Obama. You probably post about social justice on Facebook. But when you saw me walk through that door, something in your brain went, threat, outsider, doesn't belong, and you acted on it. You didn't even question it. That's what makes this whole thing so insidious. It's not always burning crosses and slurs. Sometimes it's just a man with power deciding who gets to eat in peace." Richard's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry." "I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. Sorry it's all over the news. Sorry you lost your job." Marcus stood up. "But here's what you're not sorry about yet. And I want you to think about this. You're not sorry about all the other people you did this to. The ones who didn't fight back. The ones who just left quietly, carrying that shame home with them. The ones who started to believe, even just a little bit, that maybe they really don't belong." Marcus walked to the door, then turned back. "I'm not destroying you, Richard. I'm giving you a chance to be better. Your severance package includes 6 months' salary and a recommendation for counseling. Use it. Learn something, because the world is changing whether you're ready or not." He left Richard sitting there, probably contemplating the ruins of his small-time power, and walked back into the restaurant. But instead of leaving, Marcus did something that no one expected. He sat down at the bar. The bartender, a young black woman with her hair in goddess locks, approached cautiously. "Can I get you something, sir?" "What's your name?" Marcus asked. "Jasmine." "How long have you worked here, Jasmine?" She glanced around nervously. 3 years. "You like it?" She hesitated. Marcus could see the calculations happening behind her eyes. He was the new owner. This could be a test. But there was something in Marcus's face, some invitation to honesty, that made her answer truthfully. "Not really. The pay is okay. But the management—" She trailed off. "I stay because I need the job." Marcus nodded. What if I told you that starting next week, everyone on staff is getting a 20% raise? Jasmine's eyes went wide. Sir? And what if I told you that by the end of the year, we're implementing a profit-sharing program, that the employees are going to own 30% of the company, that we're bringing in new leadership, new training, new policies to make sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else? Jasmine set down the glass she'd been polishing. Why? It was such a simple question. Why? Why would a billionaire care about a bartender's wages? Why would he restructure an entire company because of one night's humiliation? Why do any of this when he could just move on, chalk it up to the cost of being black in America, and go back to his empire? Marcus thought about his mama, about Bankhead Courts, about every time he'd been told he didn't belong. Because someone has to, Marcus said simply. Because I can. And because every time someone like me gets the power to change things and doesn't, we're just maintaining the system. I didn't build what I built so I could join the club. I built it so I could change the rules. Jasmine smiled then, really smiled, and Marcus saw something light up in her face that probably hadn't been there in years. Hope. Possibility. The idea that maybe, just maybe, things could actually be different. So, Jasmine, Marcus said, what can you make me? And please don't give me the tourist version. I want whatever you'd make for yourself after a hard shift. She laughed, nervous but genuine. You sure? Positive. She made him something off-menu, a whiskey concoction with honey and bitters and something herbaceous that Marcus couldn't quite place. It was perfect. They talked while she worked, about her dreams of opening her own place someday, about the restaurant industry, about Atlanta, about life. Other staff members started gathering around, hesitant at first, then bolder. They'd all heard what happened. They'd all seen the news. And now here was this brother, this man who could buy and sell the whole block, sitting at their bar like family. Is it true you're firing all the managers? Someone asked. Not all of them, Marcus said, but the ones who've been playing these games? Yeah, they're gone, and we're promoting from within. Jasmine here. He gestured with his glass. How'd you like to be assistant manager? She nearly dropped the bottle she was holding. What? You've been here 3 years. You know the operations. You care about the people. That's what I need. Not some business school robot who sees customers as revenue streams. Real people who understand what hospitality actually means. He looked around at the gathered staff. That goes for all of you. We're rebuilding this place from the ground up, and you're going to help me do it. Word spread fast. By the time Marcus left that night, there were people waiting outside. Customers who'd come specifically to see him, to thank him, to tell their own stories of being made to feel small. He stayed for 2 more hours, shaking hands, taking pictures, listening. An older man, had to be in his 70s, gripped Marcus's hand with tears in his eyes. My grandson saw you on the news. He said, Grandpa, that man looks like us and he bought the whole restaurant. Do you understand what that means to him? What that means to all of us? Marcus understood. God, he understood. The Gayle King interview aired on Wednesday and immediately went viral. Marcus wore the same hoodie from that Friday night, the same one he'd been wearing when they kicked him out. Why wear that? Gayle asked, gesturing to it. Marcus smiled. Because there was nothing wrong with it then, and there's nothing wrong with it now. The problem wasn't my clothes. It was never my clothes. They talked for 30 minutes, about the incident, about the acquisition, about what he planned to do with Bellissimo. But the moment that got shared millions of times, the moment that became a meme and a rallying cry and a cultural touchstone, came near the end. Some people say you're being too sensitive, Gayle said, that you should have just moved on, that buying an entire company because of one bad night is extreme, Marcus finished, petty, an overreaction. He leaned forward. Let me tell you what's extreme, Gail. It's extreme that in 2025, black people still have to wonder if they're going to be treated like human beings when they walk into a public space. It's extreme that we have to dress a certain way, talk a certain way, make ourselves smaller and quieter and less threatening just to get basic respect. It's extreme that I can be a billionaire and still get kicked out of a restaurant because someone decided I didn't look like I belonged. He paused, letting that sink in. So, yeah, I bought the company because I had the power to do it, and I'd be a coward if I didn't. Because every time someone with resources and influence chooses comfort over change, we're telling the next generation that this is just how it is, that they better get used to it. Marcus looked directly into the camera. Well, I'm not comfortable, and I'm not getting used to it. And if me buying a restaurant chain makes people uncomfortable, good. Maybe they'll start asking themselves why. The clip got 30 million views in 2 days. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the newly renovated Bellissimo flagship location. The grand reopening was happening tonight, but first, he'd invited special guests. The dining room was filled with people from Bankhead Courts, his old neighbors, his mama's friends, people who'd watched him grow up, who'd believed in him when he was just a skinny kid with big dreams. They sat at tables that had once implicitly told them they didn't belong, eating meals prepared by a new executive chef, a black woman from New Orleans who cooked with soul and sophistication. Jasmine was there, wearing her new assistant manager's jacket, beaming with pride. The entire staff was new or retrained, part of a comprehensive program that Marcus had brought in diversity consultants to develop. Every employee now had equity in the company. Every employee had a voice. The older couple from that first night sat at the best table in the house. Marcus had personally invited them, had sent a car to pick them up. When he approached their table, the woman stood and hugged him like he was her own son. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for not just walking away." "I couldn't," Marcus said. "Not anymore." At 8 p.m., Marcus addressed the crowd, not just the invited guests, but the news cameras, the curious onlookers, the people who'd been following this story since that Friday night. 3 months ago, I was humiliated in this restaurant, Marcus began. Not because I did anything wrong, not because I was rude or disruptive, but because someone looked at me and decided I didn't belong. That happens to black people every day in this country. In restaurants, in stores, in banks, in neighborhoods, in boardrooms. We're constantly being told in subtle and not so subtle ways that we're guests in spaces we have every right to occupy. He looked around the room at the faces watching him, black, white, brown, young, old, rich, poor. But here's what I want you to understand. I didn't buy this company to get revenge. I bought it to prove something. To prove that when we have power, we can use it to change systems instead of just joining them. To prove that business can be a force for dignity and justice, not just profit. To prove that a kid from Bankhead Courts can grow up to own the places that tried to keep him out. His voice grew stronger. Bellissimo is different now. Not just the name, we're rebranding as Belong, but everything. How we hire, how we train, how we treat our staff and our customers. This is going to be a place where everyone, and I mean everyone, knows they belong. Where no one has to wonder if they'll be judged by their clothes or their skin or their zip code. Where hospitality means what it's supposed to mean, welcoming people home. The applause was thunderous. Later that night, after the crowds had thinned and the cameras had packed up, Marcus found himself alone in the restaurant. He walked through the dining room, touching the tables, remembering. His phone buzzed. A text from Gerald. Forbes wants to do a cover story. The billionaire who bought justice. Thoughts? Marcus smiled. Typed back. Tell them the story's not about me. It's about what's possible when we refuse to accept how things are and start building how they should be. He stood at the window, looking out at Atlanta. His city, his home. Somewhere out there were kids like he used to be, wondering if they'd ever belong in places like this, wondering if the world would ever see them as more than the color of their skin or the zip code they came from. This was for them. All of it. The company, the fight, the refusing to be quiet or comfortable or compliant. Marcus Williams had bought a restaurant chain. But what he'd really bought was a small piece of justice in an unjust world. And he was just getting started. So now I'm asking you, would you have done what Marcus did? Would you have bought the whole company? Or would you have just walked away? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because this conversation, this is just beginning. And remember, you belong everywhere. Don't let anyone tell you different.